Hi guys, my name is Alex, I'm an architect in UK, and today we'll look into essential tips to improve your architectural sketching. So first off, in the context of architectural sketching, the purpose of a sketch is to simply get the idea from your head and onto a piece of paper as quickly as possible. And it's as simple as that. Sketching is also a versatile skill that can help with generating ideas and exploring concepts. Sketching can also be used to capture the intangible aspects of either your design proposal or its location. Things like atmosphere, texture, materiality, all those things can be conveyed much more easily with sketching rather than with words or the verbal explanation. Sketching can also be extremely effective at the later stages of your design proposal, where for example you need to figure out the detail or a specific junction or a tricky aspect of your design proposal that would be difficult or time consuming, for example, to put in a 3D software or a CAD software because it might be discarded straight away. So sketching is one of those things that I think is quite important to invest time to learn and refine because it pays dividends in the long term. So when it comes to architectural sketches, line works are the main building blocks of these sketches, and rule number one is to keep all the lines parallel to one another and also parallel to the page. So in this case I have these grid lines that assist me in drawing the lines. However, for example, if I just had a plain piece of paper, I would focus instead on orientating myself against the edge of this paper. And with that as well, there's kind of different lengths that your line can go. So typically, if it's a relatively short line, I would just use the motion of my wrist and my fingers to assist in drawing the line. So you can see the fingers are moving and the wrist is moving. So this is helpful for very short types of lines. For longer lines, what you want to do is you want to lock your wrist in place and instead focus on the motion of your elbow like so. So you can see how arm goes in an arc. If you just take a piece of that arc, that line is straight. So the other thing is, if you want to go really long and use the full length of your sheet, what you want to then focus on is actually moving your shoulder rather than moving your wrist and the elbow. So your shoulder will generate even larger arc compared to your elbow or a wrist, and that way you'll have these nice long straight lines. So let's have a look at that. So if I lock my arm, I kind of focus on my shoulder. I still use a little bit of elbow motion, especially at the top of each of these lines. And what I'm also doing is I'm looking at the edge of the paper to just see where each of these lines is going. And you can do that the same thing in the opposite direction. And lastly, important thing is to know that every line has a beginning, middle, and the end. People often make this mistake when they start drawing a line. It kind of starts strong, for example, and then it fades away. Or it might be kind of a very light beginning to the line, and then it suddenly gets very thick, or any kind of variation in between. And so I would recommend start line confidently from the very beginning through the middle and to the end. So you want to make sure that all your lines are kind of have the same type of thickness throughout as much as possible, which means keeping the same consistent pressure from the beginning to the end. So when it comes to the style of the sketch, it's really up to the purpose of the sketch. So for example, smaller sketches that are made to express the concept idea in the broad terms can be quite small, and the lines used can be quite thick, because the purpose of this sketch is to not go into details too much. It's really to explore the broad brush idea behind your concept. And so in something like this, I wouldn't necessarily go with a finer pen. I would just use the thicker pen. You know, this building might be like a 30 by 30 meter building, but we're not worrying about all the different junctions. We're only focusing on the arrangement of these different parts and volumes of the building. So then as the design project develops further and you need to add more details, then you might switch from a thicker pen to a bigger pen, and also increase the size of your sketch to make it bigger. And again, whilst doing this, always keep your lines parallel. So vertical lines parallel to vertical lines. And in this case, when I draw an axonometric, I want to keep the diagonal lines parallel to one another. So you can see here, I'm keeping these lines quite loose actually. I'm not being too precious about if it starts wobbling a little bit because my hand is shaking, I'm not just stopping there, I'm kind of continuing it all the way to the end. And the good thing about this is that it gives the drawing a little bit of this architectural feel. It's not produced by a SketchUp or AutoCAD or anything like that. It's actually drawn by hand. So then there are these type of sketches that you don't really have to be precious at all about your line weight, that really are designed to be like a quick sketch of an idea. And you can see I'm not really changing the angle of my arm. I'm letting these lines to be a little bit curvy around, because the speed speed is more important than the quality of the sketch. So you get this kind of artistic look and feel about these. If I just draw a bunch of boxes here and then refining them into a bit more detail on the bottom of the page. So for example, I might take this volume here and then sketch it out underneath a bit more preciously and with a bit more clarity so that I can actually understand what's going on there and remember it later. The speed is in these types of sketches are more important than the quality of the line weight, so that's where the rules can be broken when it comes to sketching. So this brings me to the next point, which is, don't be too precious with your sketches. That's why they're called sketches, not drawings. And it's very easy to take the sketch and transform it into drawings. So with that, it's really important to also cultivate the ability to finish the sketch, even if it doesn't look great. In the past, I would have this thing where I would start a sketch and then I wouldn't even reach the halfway point of it and I would just completely discard of it. I think there's a real shame in that because, you started kind of something that's kind of like a half decent or maybe even bad idea, but it's that process of finishing it and then going to the next one that I think actually going to make you better at sketching and drawing in general, because what it demonstrates to you that you've explored the idea fully before then jumping to the next one, rather than having this kind of half-baked idea on the side and it's kind of like cluttering your mind. You haven't really got rid of it. So even finishing the lines are the building blocks of the sketch. Finishing the lines is the first process in finishing the sketches. So when we draw the little wiggly half-finished lines, kind of jaggedy look, because we're not quite certain, I don't know where this line is gonna go, I don't know if it's gonna be any good, and it's like, oh, this is all looking really bad, I might as well just give up at this stage. Don't do that. Just try to have a bit more confidence with the lines, even if you feel that that might not be the thing that you're gonna be using. Just the process alone of putting effort in, I think is gonna yield great results. So next up are the line weights in the drawing, and the purpose of the line weights is to make the hierarchy of the drawing clear. So the things that are more important would be expressed in a thicker line weight, and the things that are less important or secondary would be thinner line weight. And similarly with the depth, the things that are closer to us would be in a thicker line weight, and the things that are behind could be much more faded away. And so this is done because of an optical illusion that's kind of embedded in our brain. Now we don't really see the world in the lines, but what we see is the contrast between different materials that are darker and lighter and that are further away and that are closer to the atmospheric perspective. And then lastly, in architectural sketches, when it comes to making the distinction between the objects that are above us or are hidden, we tend to use the dashed lines to indicate that something is behind or in front. And similarly, the center lines and what's called grid lines, the dash dot lines, to just kind of visualize where the structure is or any other element that you would like to express in a different line type. Just again, to give some hierarchy to the drawing and to make a distinction between the different objects in it. If you like to become better at sketching, I would strongly encourage you to practice as often as you can, because practice is one of those things that is proven to make anyone better at anything. So it's the same with sketching, and having a sketchbook handy, having your pen handy when you come back from work or university really helps with the habit of getting into sketching much more frequently. If you like this video, please leave a comment and subscribe for more upcoming future videos, and I'll see you in the next one.